So I would like to speak a few minutes on my recent research, which was published by TESED, and the English version will be coming in a month. It will be available online. The headscarf ban and the discrimination at the labor market. Professional headscarf women. So what I did in this research was, and how it's related to this discussion, is that I looked at the professional women who are wearing headscarf. Why professional women? Because when you look at the labor market relations in Turkey, it's the professional women and it's the agrarian women, women in the rural areas and women with higher education participate to the labor force most. The ones in between with primary school education and secondary school education fall behind in compared to those groups. So the likelihood of participation to the labor force among headscarf women is the highest. It has been around 80% 30 years ago. Now it's around 20%. So we are witnessing a drop in labor force participation of all categories, including the professional women. So that's why I focused on the professional women and try to understand their labor market experiences. I conducted focus groups, group interviews, individual interviews by myself. The data has been transcribed, analyzed through software program. So, what did my findings suggest in relationship to this argument? Well, the headscarf then is influencing women, something that you can hypothesize, influencing women's labor market participation negatively in public sector jobs. So women were like teachers, secretaries, office workers, state in the government are not allowed to work. If they are they are punished, or they have been sent to distant locations, etc. So they are not in the public jobs. They are not allowed to work. So one man might say, that's not a big deal. They can work in the private sector. So I guess the most critical finding of my research is that this headscarf ban has a spillover effect on the private sector as well. Because the public sector and the private sector are working together in relationship to each other, particularly with the white-collar jobs, the professionals have to engage with different institutions, different offices throughout his or her tenure. So having a headscarf woman in the company doesn't work for the benefit of the company, because then you are being stigmatized as an Islamist company, and you wouldn't want to have that stigma, even if you may be religiously oriented, money or boss, etc. So that spillover effect ends up influences women's recruitments, women's promotions, and when there's a cut in the jobs, then it's the women with headscarves are the first to go. In macro, I don't have macro numbers, but that macro numbers have been provided by other companies. I guess the most aggregate numbers, around 70% of all women in Turkey are wearing some form of headscarf, and among working women, only around 50% or 47% of women are not covering their hair. So there is this disproportion. It's very clear that women with head covers do not find spot or do not prefer to work in the labor market. So I also looked at their own inclinations, and it's, again, as I've said, it's a long report. You may want to look at it if you are interested in it. what I'm suggesting here is that the headscarf women, when they got a job, they are expected, because of all these negative connotations of the headscarf, when they get a job, they are expected to be invisible so that they won't bring in the prejudices that would stem from their headscarves to the company. Women are not only made visible, but they are visible to many eyes, including the academicians, including the international organizations. For example, in the last 2 years, there are 3 international and 1 national report on women's labor market participation. One was produced by World Bank, the other was produced by UNDP, the other one produced by ILO, and the other one was produced by Ministry of Work. None of these reports, all of these reports are mentioning that labor market participation of women are dropping. It used to be around 30% overall, now it's like 20%. So there's this decrease, which they, actually even in the World Bank's report, they call it Turkey's puzzle. Because they couldn't get it because the economy is similar to Turkey. The religiousness or the level of religiosity is similar to Turkey. All these countries have higher labor market participation, and Turkey fall behind. So therefore, they did all that research and they come up with the Turkish puzzle. So I'm suggesting that this headscarf then is the part of the puzzle that will make the whole picture more clear, because the headscarf band, even though it's not a rule, as I've said, it is a rule in the public that, lovely, it is a rule in public that women cannot participate to those, but it is even a factor in the private sector jobs. So if I come back to my original question in the last 2 minutes, what I'm trying to say is that, unfortunately, contrary to the previous speakers, I wouldn't agree, and I have a bit hard time in saying that New Turkey has better prospects for gender equality. As long as the ban exists, if the majority of the population is wearing headscarf ban, and labor market, women's economic participation is critical. We all know the feminist history has told us over and over and over again that labor market participation is first and the most critical part. So unless you make this possible, then there's no way really for, there's no room for reaching gender equality. Therefore, it's no surprise that women stands in the 124th among 136 countries in the global gender equality index. So I will stop here on this note. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dilek. It's